Om Akhandam Satchidanandam Avang Manasagocharam Atmanam Akhiladharam Ashraye Bhishta Siddhaye. I take refuge in the self, the indivisible, the existence, consciousness, bliss absolute, beyond the reach of words and thought, and the substratum of all for the attainment of my cherished desire. So, come to text number 181. Text number 181. We have actually completed the teachings. So congratulations there, you have made it through. What we have been given so far is an outline of Advaita Vedanta and the definitions of all the important concepts. You remember Brahman, Atman, Maya, the subtle body, causal body, physical body, the universe, then consciousness and the nature of the ultimate reality, and nature of superimposition and how to overcome that. So all of that has been talked about, and now we will. What is ahead of us is Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. What we are supposed to do is, as long as we do not reach enlightenment, we do not get that insight, we are supposed to study this, contemplate it, and meditate upon it. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Shravana is hearing, Manana is contemplation or reasoning, and Nididhyasana is meditation. So that's what they're going to talk about. That is one. And the last thing that will be there will be Jivan Mukti, which is the result of all of this, is freedom, enlightenment and freedom. So this is what is ahead of us now. Text number 181. Evam bhuta swaswarupa chaitanya sakshatkara pariyantam shravana manana nididhyasana samadhyanushthanasya upekshitatvat te api pradarsyante. Till such realization of the consciousness which is one's own self, it is necessary to practice hearing, reflection, meditation, and absorption, samadhi. Therefore, these are also being explained. So, evam bhuta, in this manner, swaswarupa chaitanya sakshatkara, until we realize our own nature, which is consciousness. Swaswarupa, our own nature. Chaitanya, consciousness. Sakshatkara, Sakshatkara means a direct realization or direct knowledge. What does direct knowledge actually mean? In this case, it means recognizing something which is always and continuously present to us. So, remember the story of the 10th man. We discussed it, I think, last Sunday and the Sunday before that. The 10th man, the 10 friends who cross the river, and then they think that have we all crossed or did somebody drown? And they count, and they find only 9 people. Each counter, of course, is not counting himself, does not realize that he is the 10th man until somebody comes and points out the 10th man is still there, 10th man has not drowned, you are the 10th man. Now, the 10th man was always present. Even when I was counting, the counter was counting and finding only 9, the 10th man was present all the time. So, in the same way, we are consciousness right now. Existence, consciousness, bliss, unlimited is what we are right now. But we don't recognize it. So, what was enlightenment? Enlightenment was when the 10th man recognizes, I am the 10th. So, this is what is called sakshatkara, a direct, literally sakshatkara means a direct cognition or a direct introduction to something. So in Hindi also, in Sanskrit, sakshatkara is a direct introduction to something. When you directly realize what it is that I am, there are a couple of points I'd like to make here. One is that this sakshatkara, this direct realization of who I am, this directness is of two kinds. Again, the directness is of two kinds. It's easy to understand this if you look at the story, the parable of the 10th man. The 10th man, being the person who was counting, being himself the 10th man, was always directly present to himself, was always there. At no time was he not there. So that's the first kind of directness, that the 10th man is always present. Exactly in that way, we are all the time, obviously, consciousness, this infinite existence consciousness place. And what more happened, that the 10th man realized, with the help of the person who was showing them, realized that I am the 10th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then I am the 10th. So that's the second kind of directness. What's the first kind of directness? The naturally existing 10th man. I'm always there. So the naturally existing, ever shining consciousness, which I am, that's the first kind of directness. The second kind of directness is when the 10th man realized, oh, I am the 10th. So that second kind of directness is what is called enlightenment, or it is called sakshatkara here. When we will realize, oh, I am Brahman. So how is that possible? It's because I am already Brahman, but I do not recognize it because of ignorance. And that is overcome in that second kind of directness, the sakshatkara, where that flash of enlightenment. So when we are doing Vedanta, we call that second kind of directness, we call it enlightenment. As consciousness, you're always present, and you're directly present. The direct availability of your real nature is not appreciated, not recognized. When we recognize this directly available own nature, it calls it swaswarup, our own nature, directly available all the time, like the 10th person, that is enlightenment. That enlightenment is an event. The directness of our own nature is not an event, it's always present. But in what we call enlightenment or direct realization, sakshatkara, that's an event that happens. It removes ignorance and our real nature is realized. So until that happens, he says, paryantam, up to that point. What are we supposed to do then till then? Shravana, manana, nididhyasana, samadhi, anusthana. Shravana, the hearing. And what are these and how to do that? We will all see now. All that will be talked about. Manana, reasoning, or reflection, as it says here. Nididhyasana, Vedantic meditation, culminating in samadhi. Samadhi is not a separate practice. Vedantic meditation, which culminates in samadhi. So usually you will see Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, and samadhi being included in Nididhyasana. Here, the author has specifically emphasized samadhi. Samadhi anusthanaha, practice. Apekshitatvat, it is required. You have to go through this as long as you do not have realization. So practices are of two types. One is depending on the result, one is called drishta phala, another one is adrishta phala. So the adrishta phala means, so these are terminologies from the ritualistic portion, the Vedic ritualistic portion, the yajnas. So there are two kinds of rituals. One which gives you a result here and now in this life, and another one which gives you a result, which promises you a result hereafter. So if you perform these rituals, you will go to heaven. Now you don't know, you haven't gone to heaven yet. So how long do you perform those rituals? As long as you are alive, you keep on doing that. But the ones which give you drishta phala, immediate result in this life, immediate result in the sense in this life itself. How long would you perform? So for example, there are rituals which promise you there'll be rainfall, or you'll have a child, or you'll defeat your enemy in battle, rituals like that. So all of those, defeating the enemy in battle or getting rainfall or having a child, those are drishta phala. That means something that you see in this very life. So how long are you supposed to do that practice? Until you get the result, because you're expecting the result in this very life. Why am I saying this? This practice, what we're going to talk about, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, hearing, reflection, meditation. How long will you do it? depending on the result. What kind of result are we expecting here? Drishtaphala. Drishtaphala means a result in this very lifetime where we can actually experience enlightenment. So you keep on doing it till you experience enlightenment, not till the end of life, unless you do not experience enlightenment till the end of life. Let's hope we will get enlightenment before that. So you keep on doing this until enlightenment comes. How will I know if enlightenment has come? Believe me, you will know. Sri Ramakrishna says, don't worry, you will know. So these steps, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, and especially Samadhi, these are now being described. We're going to talk about them in detail. A little bit about spiritual practice, at the risk of repeating myself ad nauseum. You remember the structure, the paradigm I've given you, the 3x3 matrix of spiritual practice. Problem, solution, method. 3 columns: problem, solution, method, and then 3 rows. The problem being ignorance, solution is knowledge, and the method is jnana yoga, the path of knowledge. So what is mentioned here, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, hearing, reflection, meditation, that is jnana yoga. So that's at the highest level of practice, the way of knowledge. Then in the second row, you have problem is the flickering mind, the disturbed mind, or the what is called vikshepa, the unfocused mind. Solution, focused mind. Method, upasana, or worship, or meditation. This meditation is different from the Vedantic meditation. And then the last are the ground level, the foundational level of problems, impurity of mind, chittamala, impure mind. And the solution, pure mind, chitta shuddhi. Method, karma yoga. So you have these 3 levels of practices designed to give you solutions to 3 levels of problems. Now we will see Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Remember, this is the highest and the final level of practice, the path of knowledge. And remember, all of these practices go on together. It's not that you have to do karma yoga for 40 years and then come to a Vedanta class. All of it goes on together. Before I enter into this, a Tibetan Buddhist teacher said, how do you listen? So they have the same method of practice. So when you, apparently when you enter a Tibetan Buddhist monastery, the practice is hearing, reflection, and meditation. It's there in their texts also. And one Tibetan monk said that when we, in our first class, the monastic master said, how do you listen? So the instruction was how not to listen. Do not listen like an empty, like an upside down pot, a leaky pot, dirty pot. Don't be like an upside down pot, leaky pot, and dirty pot. What's an upside down pot? So an upside down pot is when you pour water into it, everything like it goes slides down the sides. Nothing goes into it because the pot is upside down. Similarly, there might be somebody whose mind is so blocked, is not at all receptive to the teachings, and whatever is being said, not going in at all. Nothing is not being absorbed. So, for example, Swami Ranganathanandaji used to tell this joke when he was in the Ramakrishna mission in New Delhi. So he would give classes, which were very popular. Now, one day, this lady who would come very enthusiastically for the classes, he asked her as she was leaving, so did you like the class? And she said, yes, Swami, I liked the class. What did you like about it? He shouldn't have asked that, but he did ask, what did you like about it? And she replied, I'll tell you in Hindi and translate. Oh, हम क्या समझे, बड़ी बड़ी वेदांत की बात है, लेकिन क्लास बहुत बढ़िया था. Oh, what do I understand? They're all big Vedantic talks. But anyway, the class was very good. So I remember a friend of mine, once I gave a talk in our main monastery. A friend of mine, another monk, is from Nepal. Very simple monk. He doesn't know English. So after the talk, I gave the talk, and talk was in English. So after the talk, he came up and said, "That was a great talk, and would have been even better if I had understood any of it." So that was, of course, a problem of language. But upside down part means I have not received anything of the teaching. Don't listen like that. The second is a leaky pot. A leaky pot is when you pour water or something into the pot because of a hole or something, the contents leak out. So after a week, after a month, nothing is retained in it. I don't have any understanding or any recollection, no holding on to what was said. To overcome this, the traditional teachers used to recommend memorization. So before every class, you would have to recite what was taught in the earlier class. I was reading about Swami Chinmayanandaji, who's the founder of the Chinmay mission. So he wanted to learn Vedanta the traditional way, and his guru, Swami Shivananda of the Divine Life Society, told him that I'll send you to a guru. Swami Chinmayananda was from Kerala. So I'll send you to a guru who, by the way, he's also from Kerala. That was Tapovan Maharaj, who was a very great non-dualist who is to live in Gangotri at that time, Uttarkashi and Gangotri. So he's one of the few who will teach you in Hindi, because you can't learn. There are other great teachers also, but they teach only in Sanskrit. So Swami Chinmayananda goes along to Tapovan Maharaj, and Tapovan Maharaj says, "I'm not going to teach you in Malayali." Malayali is the language of Kerala. So he says, "I'm not going to teach you in Malayali. I'm going to teach in Hindi." And so the classes started, and the rule was you have to recite whatever was taught in the earlier class, and then you are allowed to attend the next class. And it seems once Swami Chinmayananda actually failed. And if you fail to recite it, that's it. You're barred from future classes for this lifetime. you're excluded. Swami Chinmayananda was almost got chucked out once he couldn't recite some particular verse. And these others, the other monks begged in his favor, so he was allowed to stay back. Yeah, so one way of making sure that we retain what is taught, but it's a very difficult requirement actually. And the third thing is the dirty pot. The dirty pot is where a person has sort of made up his mind that this is wrong, or I know better, or I'm skeptical, not giving the teachings a fair hearing. So that's a dirty pot. Whatever you pour into it, you might pour pure water into dirty pot, but what is retained there is dirty water, because it gets mixed up with the dirt inside. Another interpretation of the upside down pot is the old story of the Zen master and the tea ceremony, where a student goes to the Zen master and asks for teachings, and the Zen master starts teaching, and the student, whatever the Zen master says, the student says, "Oh, that, I know that." And finally the Zen master says, "All right, let's have some tea." And so he starts pouring tea into the student's cup, and it overflows, and the student says, it's enough, it's overflowing, stop. And the Zen master says, "Unless you empty your cup, how will you taste my tea?" So that's another another meaning of the upside down pot, where I'm not taking in anything, because it might be that I'm full of my own concepts, it's full of my own kind of theories, and I'm not. It happens a lot these days, where we go to classes and courses, and we're already full of preconceptions, our own reading. We know a lot already, and we keep trying to integrate it. You won't believe the number of people who send me books and articles and suggested reading, either written by themselves or reading for me. I'm not interested. You are supposed to listen and keep your mind on what is being taught here. So One must empty oneself and receive the teachings. One must retain the teachings. Retaining the teachings is important. Retaining is a very deep thing. One must be able to hold on to it and stay with it. Sri Ramakrishna, at one point, you find in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, a Vedantic discussion is going on. And Sri Ramakrishna listens carefully. He doesn't say anything. At the end of it, he says, the words are good, but they must be assimilated. কথাগুলো ভালো, ধারণা হওয়া চাই. What you're talking about is good, but must be assimilated. So assimilated means retained, and retained, you stay with it. And then, yeah. So that is Shravana. Now, there is a method to it. Shravana does not mean just hearing. It means systematically studying. Studying what? Studying the texts. Which texts? Well, primarily the Upanishads, which we will come to next after finishing Vedanta Sara. So there is a system of studying it. What is the system meant to do? We'll talk about it. It's a detailed description of the system is given here. There's a system of studying it. What is the system meant to do? It's meant to extract the meaning from the text. Think of the system, which we'll talk about. The system has 6 components or 6 stages. You can think of it as an algorithm with 6 steps. So these 6 steps, or the six component machine, will extract the meaning from a text. Why would you want to extract the meaning from a text? Well, why not just ask the person who's written it? And the problem is the author is not always available. When you're looking at something like the Vedas, the authors are not around. You can't ask them, what did you mean to say? So you have to interrogate the text itself. So this is called hermeneutics. It's a word which has come into vogue recently, especially with studies of the Bible. In Europe, I think 18th, 19th century, the Germans developed several methods of studying the text, biblical texts, finding out which part goes with which part and what is the point of the whole thing. The ancient Indians had developed hermeneutics, very sophisticated hermeneutics, methods of extracting the meaning from a text. Why did they do that? Because they had to find out the meaning of the Vedas. This whole religion was based on the Vedas. So they had to extract the meaning from the Vedas, and often it was very difficult. The ones who specialized in extracting the meaning from a text was the school of Purva Mimamsa. So the 6 orthodox schools of Hindu philosophy: Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Purva Mimamsa, and Uttara Mimamsa. So Purva Mimamsa, the word Mimamsa means a reverential inquiry. Pujita Vichara, reverential inquiry. Reverential inquiry into what? Into the text. What is the text teaching me? Mimamsa means that. Purva Mimamsa and Uttara. Purva means earlier. Uttara means later. Earlier reverential inquiry, or earlier inquiry into the earlier portion of the text. What is the earlier portion of the text? The ritualistic portion of the Vedas, what we call the Karma Kanda. It's the bulk of the Vedas is full of rituals, which are mostly obsolete now. We don't do them. Hindus, we have replaced the Vedic rituals mostly by our modern pujas, the ceremonial worship of deities. Of course, in Hinduism, nothing dies out, or nothing is completely replaced. So always there'll be layers, and Vedic ritualism is still alive in our pujas. But the point here is, the school which specialized in finding out the meaning of the texts which talk about Vedic rituals, they are called the Purva Mimamsa. And we, Vedanta, we are called Uttara Mimamsa, the later Mimamsa, because we deal with the later text. What is the later text? The Upanishads. So how to extract the meaning, and reverential inquiry into the meanings of the later part of the Vedas. That's the meaning of Uttara Mimamsa, and that's the name of our school. What we are doing here now is Uttara Mimamsa. The machinery for this investigation was developed thousands of years ago by the school of the earlier school, the Purva Mimamsa, those who dealt with the ritualistic portion of the Vedas. So they developed sophisticated ways of looking at texts and finding out the meaning. What does it mean um, when the texts say this? And so here is the method that is followed. And what they will do here is they will take up as an exercise, as a sample, one part of an Upanishadic text. And it will be the 6th chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad, which is a classic text because it contains the that thou art, tat tvamasi. So, so we'll see that now. That's how Shravana is done. That's how Shravana means hearing, but it actually means a systematic study of the text. And by the way, before we go into it, as we see, as you shall see, this method which will be given here, the 6 components, you can apply them to any text. Today, if you have an essay or a book you want to understand, if you apply these 6 components, you will get the meaning of the text. It's a very systematic, scientific way of approaching a text. Of course, it has to be a well-written text. Sometimes talks or even writings are all over the place. So we say that sometimes we Swamis give talks. So there's a Hanuman, a monkey model of giving a talk. The monkey model of giving a talk is you start here, then you jump to the next branch, and from that branch you jump to a different tree altogether. And you start in one place and end up in another place. So if you do that, it's very difficult to extract the meaning from the whole talk, because there probably isn't much of a meaning to the whole talk. But if it's a systematic text or systematic teaching, you can use this 6-step or 6-part algorithm to extract the meaning. All right, let's see. What is this method? Shravanam nama shadvidha lingair ashesha vedantanam advitiya vastuni tatparya avadharanam. Hearing is the ascertainment through the 6 characteristic signs that the entire Vedanta philosophy establishes the one Brahman without a second. All right. One more thing. Each of these steps, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, study of the text, reflection, and meditation, has a specific purpose. What is the purpose? The purpose of Shravana, the first step, is to ascertain the meaning of the text, is to ascertain the teaching itself. What is the text telling me? What is Vedanta telling me? To answer that question, you have the first step. So how do you know you have completed the first step? You have completed the first step when you know, yes, I understand what Vedanta is telling me, what the Upanishads are telling me, what all the Vedantic texts, Gita, the Brahma Sutras, Vedanta Sara, I know, I have a clear idea of what it is telling me. And we know what it is telling us, that thou art tat tvamasi, aham brahmasmi, we know that. You might say, okay, I know it, so that means I don't need to study the text. Now, we just know it in it won't do to know it superficially. We must know it thoroughly, in the sense that how does this text tell me I am Brahman? How does, for example, the Katha Upanishad tell me that I am Brahman? How does the Chandogya Upanishad tell me that I am Brahman? So on. Which are the sentences which tell me directly that I am the absolute? Which are the sentences which are indirectly connected to the teaching? Which are the sentences which define the absolute reality? So with all those things, we must know. That's the purpose of the first step, Shravana. It tells us the teaching. And the first step is complete when I know what the teaching is. Then what's the problem? The problem will be that I know what the teaching is, but I have many questions. I have many doubts. I don't understand lots of it. So now I go into the second stage, which is called mananam, reflection. I have many questions. I have many objections, things which are not clear about, things I don't understand, and things I don't get, things I think are wrong. I have got a different point of view, different take on it. So all this is clarified in the second step. When is the second step over? When you can say, not only do I know the teaching, now I get it. I am convinced. I'm sold. I get it. It's clear. I've got clarity now. I'm convinced about it now. I know the teaching and I understand it. Then what is the problem after that? What is the need for the third step, meditation? I know what the teaching is, and I get it. I have no more doubts, but it's not a living reality for me. I cannot honestly say that I am Brahman. I cannot honestly say that I have got the benefit from it. I have overcome suffering. I know honestly that I'm beyond death. This is not a living reality yet for me. So to make it that living reality, that is nididhyasana, the final step, the Vedantic meditation. In technical terms, the first step gives us the teaching. The second step overcomes an obstacle called the asambhavana. Asambhavana means the impossibility obstacle. After I know the meaning of the text, my reaction is impossible. Brahman, an infinite existence, such a thing is there? No. I am that Brahman? No. It's an impossible thing. The teaching, what it's saying is flat out contradictory. So that's the impossibility problem. That is overcome in the second step. And the third step overcomes another kind of problem called viparita bhavana, contrary tendencies. Contrary tendencies. These are tendencies, ingrained patterns of behavior where even after understanding, even after clarity, I still continue to behave as a body mind. I still continue to behave as a person, as a limited person, subject to frustrations and misery and ups and downs and problems. So that is overcome at the third stage when you assimilate the teaching. So Vivekananda called it assimilation. He said, tell yourself again and again, I am that, until it tingles with every drop of your blood. So it becomes a living reality. So the point I wanted to make was, the first Shravana, it gives you the teaching. Manana and Nididhyasana in Vedanta are seen more as overcoming problems. Manana overcomes what problem? Problem of impossibility. I don't get it. This is impossible what you're teaching. And the Nididhyasana overcomes what problem? The problem of contrary tendencies, that pre-existing conditioning of the mind, that has to be overcome. You have to soak in, assimilate, make it a living reality. All right, so this is good. Now we can go ahead. Shravanam Nama. What is Shravana? Shadvidalingaid, with this sixfold method, it's called Shadvidalinga, means literally 6 signs. 6 signs are used. Ashesha Vedanta, of all Vedanta, the entire corpus of Vedanta. Remember, Vedanta basically refers to Upanishads. So, of all the Upanishadic texts, Advitiya Vastuni Tatparya Vadharanam, the clarity that will come that all of Vedanta ultimately refers to one non-dual reality, Brahman. And I am that Brahman. This is what Vedanta is teaching me. And it won't do to say that, yeah, I know it. You just told me I am Brahman. Not so fast. When you are actually confronted with the Upanishads, show me, how does it show that you are Brahman? Show me, how does this sentence tally with the other sentence? How do they go together? How do they come together to show you that you are Brahman? Now, what are the 6 signs? This is very interesting. The 6 signs, the 6 components of the algorithm for extracting meaning. This is Vedantic hermeneutics. 183. Lingani tu upakrama upasanghara abhyasa apurvata phala arthavada upapatyakyani. The characteristic signs are beginning and the conclusion, number 1. Repetition, number 2. Originality, number 3. Result, number 4. Eulogy, number 5. And demonstration, number 6. And he gives a quote in the form of a verse. Taduktam upakrama upasanghara abhyasa purvata phalam arthavada upapatti cha lingam tatparya nirnaye. Text number 184. Thus it has been said, in ascertaining the meaning, the characteristic signs are the beginning and the conclusion, repetition, originality, result, eulogy, and demonstration. Okay, so what does that mean and how do we use it? So from now on, he will tell us what these steps are and how do we use it for understanding a text, especially the Upanishads. Very quickly, before we go into each of these steps, I can just tell you what they mean. When you get a text like the Upanishads or any text, you have a like a philosophical essay to read. Take a look at the beginning and the end. The beginning literally need not mean the first sentence, and the end need not mean the last sentence. Look at the first paragraph. Look at the last paragraph. That should give you some idea about what the essay is about. It's not conclusive, but if it's a well-written essay, it will definitely give you an indication what's going on in this essay. Beginning and the end. Upakrama, beginning, and upasamhara, conclusion. Look at the beginning, look at the conclusion. In fact, there is a text called Upakrama Parakrama, the power of the beginning. I have not read it myself, but it tells us how to look at the beginnings of texts to get an idea about what the text is all about. Oh, funny story. That reminds me, I had seen this picture in a National Geographic magazine in a Tibetan Buddhist monastery. So they have huge collections of manuscripts, old texts. And you can imagine an amount of time it takes to study all that. So there was this beautiful picture of the old manuscripts they are periodically bought out when there's sunshine. So to protect the manuscripts, to dry them out, I guess. They bought out, kept on wooden benches. And the young lamas, little kids, they crawl under the benches. So it's like a ritual. All the knowledge is supposed to soak into your head if you crawl under the benches which are loaded with all the books, So if only it was so easy. So that is upakrama upasanghara, beginning and end. Then the next one is abhyasa, repetition. What is the point which is hammered again and again and again throughout the text? If it's a well-written text, the central point will be mentioned more than once, what they're trying to say. If you look at a politician's speech, give me votes, vote for me, so that he'll come around to that again and again. Classic example is the 6th chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad. 9 times, Tattvamasi, 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 that thou art, 9 times. So that must be the central teaching. Then, so abhyasa means repetition. And then apurvata. What's the unique message in that? It will talk about many things, but it will talk about something unique to it, something that you don't find elsewhere. And that will be the special teaching. So that's another sign of the teaching of that text, is a uniqueness. Something special, unique message we're trying to get from it. Then another good way of finding out the meaning of a text is arthavada. It's a good way. Eulogy, praise. What is being praised? What is being advertised? What is being sold in that text or in that essay? So a politician who's giving a talk about, a political talk would talk about his or her achievements, and the point being that you should vote for me. Similarly, what is being sold here? You will see that in Upanishads, enlightenment, Brahma-jnana, the knowledge of the absolute, that is being praised again and again as that which solves all our problems. So then all right, this is what is being advertised. So this must be the teaching of the text. Arthavada, which means praise or eulogy. And then phalam. Phalam means result. By looking at what is promised, what is the benefit of it? What is the purpose of it? What do you get out of it? By looking at that, you'll get a clue about what the teaching is. And then upapatti. Look at arguments. You will find, especially in a philosophical paper, or even a political speech or whatever, you will find certain amount of reasoning is going on there. So if you try to see what is the author or the speaker trying to prove, so that person is arguing for, like a lawyer arguing for, so my client is innocent, that all the arguments are going to show that the person I'm defending is innocent. So by looking at the arguments, you realize what the lawyer is trying to say. So if it's a text which is arguing for a particular position, by looking at the arguments, you get it. This is the teaching. And they are all the arguments are going to show that you are Brahman. Right. So these are the 6 components. And now he's going to give us a demonstration. The 6th chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad is a pretty good, like a case study. Also, because we took that thou art Mahavakya from the 6th chapter. So he's going to take the 6th chapter and show us how to apply these 6 signs. Text number 185. Prakarana pratipadyasyaarthasya tadadyantayoho upapadanam upakrama upasangharo yatha chandogye shashtadhyaye prakarana pratipadyasya dvitiya vastuna ekameva dvitiyam ityado aitadatmyamidagam sarvam ityante cha pratipadanam. The beginning and the conclusion mean the presentation of the subject matter of a section at its beginning and end. As, for instance, in the 6th chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad, Brahman, one without a second, which is the subject matter of the chapter, is introduced at the beginning with the words, one only without a second, and again at the end in the words, in it, all that exists has itself. So pretty self-explanatory. Prakarana pratipadyasya. Whatever is the point of the whole section, whichever you're studying, the text. Adyantayor, the beginning and the end, it will be presented. So this is called upakrama. Upakrama, beginning. Upasanghara, conclusion. So take a look at the beginning and the end of this. It could be a book, it could be a chapter of a book, it could be an essay, it could be a speech, whatever. Yatha, like, example. Chandogya Shashtadhyaya, in the 6th chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad. This is the chapter where Shvetaketu comes back from school and his father asks him, did your teachers teach you that by knowing which everything is known, and so on. And then finally the father will tell him there is one reality which you are, that thou art. So that's the chapter. So when you look at that chapter, at the beginning and at the end, you will find the mention of Brahman, the absolute reality. So at the beginning, and very interesting. So one without a second, ekam eva dvitiyam. One only without a second. Ekam, one. Eva, only. Advitiyam, without a second. But if you look at the chapter, actually, it doesn't start with, the first word is not one without a second. It starts with the story of Shvetaketu. So therefore, it's not just the first line or the first word you have to look at. You have to read it a little bit to see the beginning. And it ends with this reality we are talking about, the one without a second, is the self of all beings. So what is being taught in the 6th chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad? Brahman, a non-dual reality, which is you yourself. So this is the power of the beginning and the end. Then the next sign is 186, text number. Prakarana pratipadyasya vastuna tanmadhye paunah punyena pratipadanam abhyasah yatha tatraiva advitiya vastuni madhye tattvamasiti navakritva pratipadanam. Repetition is the frequent presentation of the subject matter in the section. As, for instance, in the same section, Brahman, the one without a second, is repeated 9 times in the sentence, thou art that. Pretty self-explanatory. Another clue to the meaning of the whole section is what's being repeated again and again. So in that 6th chapter, you will find the father tells the student, his son, 9 times, that thou art, that thou art, that thou art, tattvamasi, tattvamasi. This is pretty much the point of the whole section. Now, it's not always this easy. Sometimes you may find the point made just once or twice in a section. Not every section has the central teaching repeated 9 times for our benefit. Then text number 187, uniqueness. प्रकरण प्रतिपाद्यस्य अद्वितीय वस्तुना प्रमाणांतर विषयीकरणम अपूर्वता यथा तत्रैव अद्वितीय वस्तुनम मानांतर अविषयीकरणम. Originality means the subject matter of a section is not available through any other source of knowledge. As for instance, in that very section, Brahman, the one without a second, is not knowable through any other means except the Shrutis. Again, pretty much self-explanatory. The section is teaching us something that's unique. That's the purpose of the section. You don't. So here, it, for example, it teaches about Brahman, or you are Brahman, and you don't find that elsewhere. Now you have to be careful. Elsewhere, you do find it in all the Upanishads. All the Upanishads are teaching that, and you find it in all the Vedantic texts. You find it in all the translations of the Vedantic texts. You find it if you read it in Hindi or Bengali or English, you find the same teaching. It doesn't just mean the original Upanishad alone in the Sanskrit, but this is the teaching of the unique teaching of the Upanishads. So this is where you find it. So, and this would be the point of the whole teaching, point of the whole section. Another clue is result. What do you gain out of it? If you look at the result, what is being promised, what is being advertised, by that you will, what is being promised, the benefit, you will understand what is being taught. Result means fruit, phalam, fruit. Text number 188. Phalam tu prakarana pratipadyasya atmajnanasya tadanushtanasya va tatra tatra shruyamana prayojanam yatha tatra acharyavan purusho veda tasya tavadeva chiram yavanna vimokshe atha sampatsye ityadvitiya vastu jnanasya tat prapti prayojanam shruyate. The result is the utility of the subject matter of a section. That is self-knowledge or its practice as mentioned at different places. As for instance, in the same section, the words, the man who has got a teacher knows Brahman, he has to wait only till he is delivered from the body, then he becomes united with Brahman. Here, the utility of the knowledge of Brahman, the one without a second, is its attainment. So in other words, result is enlightenment and liberation. He says, Tatra tu prakarana pratipadyasya atmajnanasya tadanushtanasya va tatra tatra shriyamana prayojanam. What is being taught there? What is taught in the section of the Upanishad? Self-knowledge. I am Brahman, that thou art. What is the result of that? You see, there itself in that section you will find the result has been mentioned. What do you gain out of it? This is called prayojanam, the benefit, the purpose of this study. What are we looking for? By looking at that, so when you look at the result, you will understand the teaching. If the result is moksha, liberation, then the teaching must be self-knowledge. Why? Because we have Advaita Vedanta says that ignorance is the cause of bondage, ignorance about ourselves. So if the result is liberation, then the teaching must be self-knowledge. Knowledge must be the teaching. Knowledge about what? Knowledge about the self. I am that. And this is actually a quote from the 6th chapter, which goes on to say, Acharyavan Purusha Veda. It is the student who has a teacher who becomes enlightened. So that's a way for teachers to remain relevant. No, but it's important. I have seen so many cases of even serious students, who try to read it for themselves. It's easy to be misled. The subtleties which if you're just reading the book, if you're just reading a translation, you don't get it. And a teacher can point out the subtleties. Differences, slight differences in interpretation. Either a person does not get what is being taught here or gets it wrong, even worse. Gets it wrong, simply gets it wrong. So that's why Acharyavan Purusha Veda. It is the student who has got an Acharya, a teacher, who becomes enlightened. And after getting that enlightenment, He talks about Videha Mukti and Jivan Mukti. Of course, the moment you get enlightened, I am Brahman, you are liberated. That's Jivan Mukti. And then he talks about, that's understood here. And he talks about Videha Mukti. You live in this body, this life continues as long as the Prarabdha karma, the, the karma which has generated this body is not exhausted. So you live as an enlightened being. And after that is what you call attainment of Videha Mukti, the bodiless liberation. From the point of the liberated person, it's the same thing. There's no difference. Having the body and dropping the body at death is a minor thing for the minor matter for the enlightened person. It's nothing of consequence, but it's a big deal from our perspective. Then one more is praise or eulogy, advertisement. What is being advertised? What is being projected here? Prakarana pratipadyasya tatra tatra prashansanam arthavadaha. Whatever is being taught here, the praise, prashansa, the praise, that is called arthavada. Arthavada basically is Vedic eulogy. So certain, in the ritualistic portions, certain rituals, yajnas, they are praised. So these examples are also archaic. Examples are meant to make a thing easy, but these examples are so ancient, they have lost relevance for even Hindus, let alone people in the modern age here. Even traditional Hindus also don't get the examples. Example is Vayur Vaikshepishtha Devata. Among the Vedic gods, the god of wind is the fastest. What does it mean? That you perform this particular ritual because the god of wind is the one who gives the results fastest. Now, what's the point of it? The point is that this particular ritual is being advertised. By praising the god of wind, you are being encouraged to offer a sacrifice to the god of wind. I can see your mystified expressions, but it will become clear as I go on. Yatha tatraiva utatam adesham aprakshyo yena shrutam shrutam bhavati amatam matam avigyatam vigyatam iti advitiya vastu prasangshanam. Eulogy is the praising of the subject matter of the section at different places. As, for instance, in the same section, which section are we talking about? 6th chapter of Chandogya Upanishad. Have you ever asked for that instruction by which one hears what has not been heard, one thinks what has not been thought, one knows what has not been known? What are we talking about here? Consciousness. One, that which is behind, which enables all hearing, all understanding, all thinking, but which itself is not heard of, which you cannot hear, see, smell, taste, touch, consciousness. You cannot think about it also. It illumines all our thoughts and perceptions. So have you been taught that thing? It's a kind of advertisement for the subject matter. So these are praises which have been spoken in praise of Brahman, the one without a second. Then finally, the text number 190. Arguments, logical arguments, like a lawyer's arguments. If you look at the arguments themselves, you understand what is being said here. Prakarana pratipadyartha sadhane tatra tatra shruyamana yukti rupapattihi yatha tatra yatha saumya ekena mitpindena sarvam rinmayam vigyatam syad vacharambhanam vikaro namadheyam mrittika ityeva satyam ityadau advitiya vastu sadhane vikarasya vacharambhana matratve yukti shruyate. Demonstration is the reasoning in support of the subject matter of a section adduced at different places. Basically, the arguments which you come across. As for instance, in the section in question, which section? Chapter 6 of the Chandogya Upanishad. The words, my dear, as by one lump of clay all that is made of clay is known, every modification being but an effort of speech, a name, and the clay is the only reality about it. Furnish the argument that modifications are merely an effort of speech to establish Brahman, the one without a second. What does this mean? You find that in the 6th chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad. Basically, what it means is this. The father told the son, did your teachers teach you that by knowing which everything is known? Sarvamidam eka vijnanena sarvam vijnatam bhavati. By one knowledge, you know everything. Well, the immediate reaction is, how can we know everything by one knowledge? By knowing botany, I know all about plants, but I don't know about animals. I don't know about the stars and the planets. By knowing astronomy, you know about the stars and the planets, but you don't know about particles, particle physics. Um, who was that? Even when you know, it's the very nature of knowledge is it's Thomson. He got the Nobel Prize. Somebody was giving a talk about the constant flux in which science finds itself. So Thomson, in the, I think, Cavendish laboratory in Cambridge, where they discovered the electron, right? There's this, I don't know if it's Cambridge or Oxford. They showed me a little lane, very narrow lane, where they said that the modern world was established, is founded on the discoveries made here, Swami. The first was a lab where they discovered the electron. So all our electricity and all of that is based on that. And then there was this pub, I think it's called the Eagle, where Watson and Crick, they talked about the DNA, the double helix structure. And then one more where I think something which talks about our whole information technology. Anyway, 3 discoveries, each of them leading to Nobel Prizes. It says our whole world is based, modern world is based on these discoveries. Now, where was this? Is it Cambridge or Oxford? I think it's Oxford. Cambridge?
Cambridge.
Cambridge, yes, yeah. Cambridge. Yes, it's a very narrow lane. You can't even take a car inside it. And it's all within walking distance. Yes. And so somebody was saying in a talk, they discovered, Professor Thomson there, he discovered the electron. He got the Nobel Prize for it. 20 or 25 years later, his son made a discovery that the electron is, his father had discovered electron is a particle. His son discovered that electron is a wave. It's not a particle, and he got the Nobel Prize for it. And then I think it was Schrödinger who said that it's a wavicle, and he got the Nobel Prize for it. And then Heisenberg, before that, actually, he had said, we do not know exactly what the electron is, and he got the Nobel Prize for it. So, but the arguments in favor of what you are trying to establish. So argument is like this. Do you know that knowledge by which everything is known? Our immediate reaction is, what could be that knowledge by which everything is known? You know one branch of knowledge, you don't know anything else, you know only that. So he gives an argument here. Just as by knowing a lump of clay, you know everything made of that clay. In the sense, what would you know? That it is clay alone. From a lump of clay, the potter can make a wide variety of pottery, different designs and all. But you know one thing, if it is made of that lump of clay, you know for sure it is only clay and nothing else but clay. All the forms and names are just that. They're names and forms. They have no substantial reality. Whatever pot is made out of it, pottery is made out of it, you touch it, you'll be touching the clay. You weigh it, you'll be weighing the clay. So the reality is that what the potter does is give a shape to it, a form and a function to it. So the foundational reality remains the same. And that's the argument. There is one foundational reality, and the entire universe is nothing other than that. And that foundational reality is existence. So everything else, Sat means pure being. Everything else is nothing other than that Sat. It is just name, form, and function. So if you know that Sat, you know the reality of this entire universe. You know that pure being, that infinite, absolute being, then you know everything. Because nothing in this universe can be different from that being. I was reading Heidegger's Introduction to Metaphysics, and he says, so Heidegger is the one Western philosopher in modern times who has gone back to the greatest of questions, the question of existence itself. And he says, very nice analysis, he says this question of existence is the greatest of all questions. How? He says it is the first of all questions, and he says it is the widest of all questions, and it is the most profound of all questions. So first, because before existence there's other than existence. Before existence there's nothing. You have to start with existence itself. Widest, because it includes everything. What could be outside existence? Only non-existence could be outside existence, and non-existence does not exist. So the question of existence includes everything. And then he says it's the most profound of questions. What is a profound question? A question which questions itself. So when you are questioning the nature of existence, that question itself is an existing thing. So it's questioning itself. It's self-reflexive. So because of these reasons, he says, Heidegger says, this is the greatest of questions, that what is existence? And the argument here is, just like a lump of clay, you make pots out of it. The pots are nothing but that clay. Similarly, the entire universe, if you would know existence, what existence is, you would know the entire universe. By this one knowledge, everything is known. Eka vijnanena sarvam vijnatam bhavati. You ask, would you know the different kinds of names and forms and functions? No. That is the provenance of Maya. But one thing would be sure, you would know it is Brahman only. It is that one existence only. Yeah. So that's an argument. And by that argument, what do you get? What we get is that this whole section is about Brahman, is about the absolute existence. Okay, I think we'll stop here and take a look at the activity in the chat. So today we saw what is Shravana. Shravana is the systematically studying the text in order to extract its meaning. What is a system? The system has 6 components. Upakrama, upasanghara, beginning and end. First, abhyasa, repetition. Third is phalam, result. What do you get out of it? Fourth is uniqueness. What is the unique message of this section? Fifth is the praise. What is arthavada? What is being praised here? What is being advertised here? And finally, upapatti. What is being argued for here? With these 6, we can extract the meaning from a text. All right, let's quickly look at. Rick says, haven't many enlightened people continued to do Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana? Yes, but not to get enlightened. You're right. They continue to hear, reflect, and meditate, but not to get enlightened. You mentioned the Buddha and others meditating all their lives. Correct. So it could be as an example, setting an example to others, that this is what you need to do. Or it could just be, after enlightenment, the body mind continue in the mode which they are most accustomed to. So you would never find an enlightened person saying, all right, that's done. Enlightenment, I've ticked the box. Now I'm going to go back to my job in Wall Street or just something else. Let me go ahead in life and do something, which I've not done yet. No. Once you have attained that, you stay with it. Not for getting anything more. You've already got it. But that becomes your mode of life. And of course, it has a secondary function as a teacher, as a person who stands as a beacon, as a demonstration to others. Patrick says, how does an object arise and disappear in consciousness? Through names and forms. How does a pot arise and disappear in clay? How does a wave arise and disappear in water? Krishnamurti says, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana are meant to make us realize that the universe is a projection of that which I am. Correct? Also, for someone who is still on the grip of ahankara, Bhakti Yoga teaches us to practice Ishvara alone exists. I do not. Not quite. Advaita tells us that the implied meaning behind both of these statements are the same, Tattvamasi. However, as both Bhakti Yoga and Jnana Yoga go in parallel, how are these two reconciled in practice day to day? All right. So Bhakti Yoga does not teach you that you do not exist. That would be disastrous. Bhakti Yoga teaches you that God exists and you are the devotee of God. So the Lord is my master, I am the servant. The Lord is my father or mother, and I am the child. The Lord is my friend, and so on. These are the attitudes that if I don't exist, then there is no point. I do exist, and I have a relationship with God. And that is very helpful in spiritual practice. Until we are ready to claim I am Brahman, we still remain in the dualistic mode of I am a jiva. I'm an individual sentient being. And so I have a relationship with the absolute. That relationship is my relationship with God. Even after you are ready to claim that I am one with God, I am one with God is only from the ultimate perspective. From the personal, even after enlightenment, the body continues because of past karma. The mind will also continue, at least for this lifetime. And so in the case of many enlightened beings, their continued existence is often the existence of a bhakta, of a devotee. Not compulsorily so. Sri Ramakrishna puts it beautifully. Even after enlightenment, the ego comes back. The I comes back. It floats back again. Just like the body comes back into our awareness, of the mind comes back, the ego also will function. Now, what do you do with that ego? So it can continue in two ways. He says one way is the way of the devotee, where it says, I am the servant, the Lord is my master. Though I know I am one with the Lord, like Hanuman says, as Atman, as pure consciousness, I am one with you, O Rama. But as Hanuman, I am the servant, thou art my master. So that can continue. Or the ego can continue to say, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham, I am of the nature of pure consciousness, pure being. That is also the state of a Jivan Mukta. This discussion we have had in the three meanings of the use of I. What does I mean? I for an unenlightened person and I for an enlightened person. So I for an unenlightened person is I am this person, this body mind, that's it. But I for an enlightened person has two meanings. One is I am Brahman in the ultimate sense. And ultimate means not later on, right now. And the secondary sense of I would be, I am this person whom you might consider enlightened, but I am this person. And from that secondary sense, the enlightened person can still relate to God as a devotee. I'm the devotee, the Lord is my master. Yeah. So until that point, my relationship with God continues as devotee and God. Vishwanath Swami Tapovanam would also teach any topic once, and the students were not allowed to take any notes. I didn't read that, but yeah, that sounds quite in character with him. He was a very tough teacher, and you were given the privilege of attending classes. There were 2 classes in a day, and you had to be a monk. Only monks were allowed, and you had to find your own hut or your cave to stay in, and you had to beg for your own food. And so these are the rules. And what else? Yeah, you couldn't hang around after the classes to ask questions. And so one student, a monk, after the class, he was waiting to ask some further questions to Tapovan Swami. He asked the question, and Tapovan Swami said, Jaiye manan kijiye brahmachari ji. So, oh brahmachari, novice, go back to your hut and mananam, the second stage. Don't ask questions, think about it. Srinivas asks, what is the difference between nididhyasana, which is a spiritual practice pre-realization, and staying with it post-realization to purify the mind?